Hi, good morning. Today we're beginning today's work session for September 13th, 2018. If we could start by rising for the pledge. Jody, you want to lead us off?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, got in sync by the end there. It's not on the agenda, but there was a request from Mr. Beegler to come up. He's from the Reeves Park Civic Association, so did you just want to come up and join us for a minute? Yep.
When were we doing the special?
Thank you for indulging me for 5 minutes this morning. On Tuesday this past week, 9/11, we had our memorial service. I know a lot of you attended. Those of you who weren't were there in spirit. I appreciate it. There's a lot of people to thank for how successful it was. And always, every year, the groups that participate constantly always get the recognition. The fire department, the volunteer ambulance corps, and Boy Scouts were there, my community. But I wanted to single out a specific group that doesn't normally get involved. We have a wonderful park up there. The Buildings and Grounds crew do a great job of maintaining it all the time. It looked perfect. However, in front of the park, there's a little bit of a depression. There's a drainage issue up by the road. The water gets filled up. There's a lot of water that builds there, especially during this time of this monsoon season we seem to be having in Riverhead. We had a tremendous amount of rain on Monday. On Tuesday morning, as I was driving out of the park, about 11:30, I saw the puddles build up. I was like, oh, this is gonna be a mess. I picked up the phone and I called the highway department. I talked to the young lady at the desk. This was about 11:30 in the morning. She said she wasn't sure what she could do. She would ask the questions. She would see if Gio and the crew could come down there and do something. And I went to town and did my shopping. I came back an hour later. The crews were there. And they had a huge pump truck. They drained the drainage that was off to the side, cleaned that up. They pumped up the water on the street. When they pumped up the water, they noticed that there was a lot of potholes and dugout marks there. They not only they left there with the pump crew and came back with a patch crew. They took the tar and they patched the patches, so by the time we had our ceremony at 6 o'clock at night, there was no water, there was no cracks in the street, and it was absolutely phenomenal. This is exactly what a small town should be about. I don't know any other town in Long Island that we would have got that kind of response within an hour to get a crew down there. So, for the record, I just wanna say Gio and his group did a great job. I appreciate it, and well worth that part of the taxes that I pay. So thank you very much, and I'm sure you guys were there, would have supported. If I would've called the office, they would've done the same thing, but they reacted and they did a great job. Thank you very much, thank you for attending, and I appreciate it.
And thank you to the Superintendent, Gio Woods, and it was a lovely ceremony, and thank you for continuing to carry on the tradition. It means a lot to the community.
It becomes hard after 17 years.
Yeah,
but,
I know,
you
but I mean, the community support and that comes there, and the outpouring and the gathering is really something special.
Thank you,
So thank
thank
you.
you very much,
And
appreciate your time.
I wasn't able to make it because I had a meeting here at Town Hall, and we talk about September 11th, and we talk about never forgetting. And I would hope that next year and in future years, meetings would not be conducted at Town Hall on September 11th.
Especially during the time of my ceremony.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
I want you guys there.
Yes.
You guys have meetings all day long, just, about
Yeah,
6 o'clock.
it wasn't a town board meeting. I think it probably could have been adjusted, but yes.
No, but there was a farm committee meeting, there was a recreation
lot of
committee meeting, there was a ethics board meeting, there were all kinds of meetings at Town Hall for between 5 and 7.
Okay.
So I would hope that next year we would hold off on scheduling meetings on those days.
But thank you for starting our meeting off on a positive note.
Oh, it
Thank
was
you.
great, it was
Really,
great,
thank
thank
you.
you,
It was a
appreciate it.
really nice event, and since you mentioned monsoons, I just have to say, we need to keep South Carolina and North Carolina in our prayers today.
Thank you.
Thank you very much,
Thank
appreciate
you.
it.
Jody, you know what, we might wanna memorialize that for September 11th, so if you wanna put a resolution forward, and then we can not hold meetings on that day, or, not after 2 o'clock or something on those, that day, I think that might be something we wanna do as
Okay.
a board moving forward.
Yep.
All right, at this point, I would like to call up, East End Disabilities. We have a proclamation for them.
Over you, it's right in front
That's
of
right. You guys wanna stand up?
Are you trying to get us up?
Yeah, I'm trying to get you
climbing
out,
over
this is
me.
exercise period.
Alright, I am going to move.
See you again. I think we're coming up here, Laura, they're coming in here, right?
Jen here. Good morning. Hi, how are you? Good. Hi, how are you? How's everything?
It's gonna give you a kiss.
Hi, how are you? Hi, good morning. Hi, I think Jody Giggly. All right, so this is a proclamation. This week is Direct Support Professionals Recognition Week, which is September 9th through 15th. So I'm just gonna read through the proclamation that we have. Whereas it is both fitting and proper that the town board and all the citizens of the town of Riverhead join East End Disability Associations, Inc. in honoring those who have gone above and beyond. And whereas a direct support professional provides essential support to help keep an individual with disabilities connected to their family and community to live meaningful, successful lives and to avoid costly institutional care. And whereas direct support workers, direct care workers, personal assistants, personal attendants, in-home support workers, and paraprofessionals are the primary providers of publicly funded, long-term support and services for millions of individuals with mental health issues and disabilities. And whereas direct support professionals, DSPs, are vital to the life experience of many people with disabilities in the town of Riverhead and are often the difference between community participation and isolation. Whereas a DSP must build a close, trusting relationship with individuals and assist with their most intimate needs on a daily basis. They provide a broad range of services, including preparation of meals, help with medications, personal hygiene, mobility, transportation, and general daily assistance. And whereas the work of these professionals is essential to allowing individuals with mental health issues and disabilities to live successfully as part of their communities, and also enables these individuals and their families to avoid extensive, costly institutional care. And let it be known that Direct Support Professionals Week is an opportunity to recognize the important work of those who ensure inclusive environments with equal access to all. And now therefore, the town of Riverhead recognizes the vital roles of dedicated DSPs play in enhancing the lives of individuals with disability. We extend our appreciation for their contributions that help thousands overcome challenges and help them reach their full potential. And therefore, I do hereby proclaim the week of September 9th through 15th, 2018 as Direct Support Professionals Recognition Week in the town of Riverhead, and urge all residents to sustain public knowledge of these individuals who contribute to making a quality community life for those with disabilities. So, congratulations.
Or do you wanna all try and come in and we can get a picture? Laura, does everybody wanna try and get in and try and get a shot? You're taller than me, so technically he's just, let's see.
Right? Are we close enough? Well, we're gonna have to take turns.
Yeah, definitely. Let's be nice. Alright, let me, 1, 2, 3. Alright.
Oh, he'll tell you what day it is.
Yes,
This is amazing.
he's very good at that.
What's your birthday? Yeah.
August 1st.
What year?
1960.
It was a Wednesday.
He told me my birthday was on a Saturday this year. I was like,
He's good,
What's
he's
your
good.
name? What's your birthday? What year?
I'm not giving it up.
Thursday.
There you go.
He's good.
And my family can play for it.
What's your,
November
I put on my
what year?
1961.
It's gonna be on a Friday.
He's smart, see?
Very
You're
good.
the best, Bob.
All right, thank you very much, guys. Good to see everybody.
That's cool.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Last time I saw you guys, you were sick.
Thank you.
Did you have that?
What's your name?
When's your birthday? 1957.
Yeah.
Okay. Can you tell me what day I was born on?
Tuesday.
Okay. He's good.
Good.
You do. February 9th.
It's gonna be on a Monday.
We get a lot.
He's gonna take over.
He's turned anybody to know.
Yeah,
She was saying something about
I know.
I was like, shush.
We're working out glitches in the new system for the thing, but we need to just open a town board meeting to change the 18th meeting till 2 o'clock that we all agreed on because of, Yom Kippur. Okay, so we're just gonna go to do that.
Okay.
You?
That is
All right,
me.
so I
Mr.
just have to, call a meeting to open a town board meeting for September 13th, 2018. It is now 10:20, I don't have to get a first and second to open the meeting or anything, or should I?
Yeah.
Okay,
How can it hurt?
not
Yeah,
necessarily.
right, how
Yeah,
can it hurt?
okay.
There you
All right,
go. I
can I get
like
a first
that.
and second to open the meeting?
I move that we open the meeting.
Second.
Okay, moved in second, and all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, so carried. So the meeting is now open. We have one resolution. It's a resolution to change the town board meeting, till 2 o'clock on September 18th, 2018. When the schedule was made back in January, it was not noted that this was Yom Kippur, which starts at sundown on the 18th, so we would like to change our meeting till 2 o'clock. So it's a resolution to change town board meeting time. Can I have a first and second?
I'll second.
Okay,
So
so
Tim-
Tim's making the motion, and Jody seconds.
Okay,
Do you wanna do a roll call vote, or?
sure, yeah, might as well. Kent,
Yes.
Hubbard,
Yes.
Giglio,
Yes.
Jen Smith.
Yes,
The resolution is adopted.
okay, and at this point, I would like to close the town board meeting and return to the work session. Can I have a first and second for that?
Move that we close the meeting, move to the work session?
Second.
Moved and seconded, vote please.
Kent.
Yes.
Hubbard.
Yes.
Giglio.
Yes.
Jen Smith.
Yes,
The meeting is closed.
okay. Thank you very much.
I like those fast meetings.
Yeah.
Okay, at this time, we're going to move on to, special permit, glass greenhouse. If we could have the applicant come up, and we have Jeff Murphy and Mr. Kazakevich. If you guys would
Good
just
morning,
introduce
everybody.
yourself, good morning, just on camera,
Yeah, I'm Walt Gabrielson from the Glass Greenhouse, 1350 Main Road, Jamesport.
okay?
Jarrett Weber, Weber Law Group, 290 Broad Hollow Road, Suite 200E, attorneys for the applicant.
Okay. And who wants to present first? You guys would like to present us some information for the special permit? I know that you have been here before, there were some questions, and so,
Yes, I would like to thank the town board for, taking the time, at this work session. As counsel, I have been in contact with, the town attorney, Mr. Kazakevich, often over the last 2 or 3 weeks, and I know that there are, some issues with regard to questions about a takeout service, that were raised, and, Mr. Kazakevich and I have gone back and forth, but we agreed that we felt that it was better that, at a work session, whatever issues, the town board were having, instead of, through a third-party medium, through myself, that we have this work session and we, get the issues. I would like to start by saying, I know the issue of takeout service was raised. 2 issues from my standpoint, are, number one, the definition of a bistro within the, town code, prohibits drive-in and drive-out, but does not, talk about any restrictions with regard to, takeout. The last issue is, and I made copies,
well, can we just have one conversation, let's just finish and then we can question.
the other issue I'd like to raise before we can get into board concerns, and I made copies, this is a copy of the resolution for the, Jamesport, vineyard. The special permit that was on a couple weeks ago, a week or 2 before the glass greenhouse. and was, approved, I believe, shortly thereafter. That's another copy if you'd like. On the second page, on the, resolve, and the special permit was granted for the Jamesport Vineyard with the following conditions. There is no condition pertaining to, limitation or any type of, I guess, conditions with regard to service, to limit takeout or anything like that. So my general inquiry is that for a, vineyard that's certainly, and I know the bistro is a different size, but that's about 300 feet down the road, why there were no, conditions with regard to takeout put in for a bistro special permit under the same zoning, and these issues have obviously become sort of an issue preventing the approval at this stage for, this application. So those are my two general, but certainly we're here to address any of the board concerns.
I think one of the, just to raise that point, I think the, part of the difference is that the, bistro at the Jamesport is secondary to the wine service. And I think some of the concern raised at this venue was not only past history of what has taken place there, but also the fact that what is to keep somebody there, what is it, why is this not a deli? If you have the takeout, you're not, there's no, what is the mechanism that somebody would linger there for other than the bistro? And how does that then not convert into a deli?
Well, I can answer that. We have the glass greenhouse, where people come in, most of our customers from the West End, and a lot of them wanna sit down for a cup of coffee or something else. It's part of the glass greenhouse. It's not, the bistro would not be a primary part of the market building itself. It's just a small piece. The reason we're only doing 15 seats and versus 50 seats is because, quite frankly, we cannot handle it. There's a big labor shortage all over. I mean, the greenhouse itself, we were underhanded 5 people, just for the greenhouse. So people come in, they buy a plant, they wanna sit down before they spend an hour, 2 hours going back to the West End, and, it's a convenience to my customers.
That's fine if they wanna sit down, but what is the definition of bistro? Cause you said that you have the definition of bistro, so does it say takeout?
I can tell you what it says.
I don't think it does. It says sit-down service.
This is it, quote unquote. Bistro / cafe, quote, an eating establishment of 50 seats or less, whether indoor or outdoor, without drive-through or drive-in service, period, end of quote.
Well, to address, also, the bistro is not, and the comparison that you, brought up with regard to, the bistro is not going to be the main function of Glass Greenhouse. Mr. Gableson has what, 4,000 members of a garden club?
I mean, we have the Glass Greenhouse has a customer base of about 35,000 people, which come mostly from the West End. And, they come out, again, they buy plants, sometimes someone will come in and buy a cup of coffee, they'll walk around the greenhouse shopping. A lot of times, the wife shops, the husband sits down and waits for them. So it's part of the whole thing of providing something for people that shop. We have a 4,000 member garden club. The Glass Greenhouse brings a lot of people in there, so we're adding a convenience. As far as, it's all like there, you know, it's not,
Well, I guess that's part of the issue, you know, if somebody's shopping in one, is the other one going to grab a bite to eat and then heading out? That's, you know, that's where you end up in this deli type situation, and I'm just trying to wonder what else is gonna be in the market?
well, we have produce, we do baked pies.
There's a lot of space there for produce and baked pies, what else you got?
Well, okay, it's a 5,000 square foot. If you take all the peripherals out, the kitchen out, behind the counters out, it's only about 1,800 square foot, where customers can actually walk. Just because the building is 5,000 square foot doesn't mean people can go in every corner.
Correct, there's not, in terms of shelving space, I guess is your concern, of other things that might be sold there. The shelving space it's not, again, as Ms. Gable said, it's not 5,000 square feet as you think it's a huge space, it's not that much, and there's not a lot of shelving, there's produce, you know, there's other things, and this was again discussed at the board meeting with regard to what was being sold there. But also, and I guess understanding the concerns of the board, you know, certainly we are looking to, obtain this approval, and not further delay it at this juncture. What would the board propose with regard to, allaying these concerns? In terms of the approvals for, disposable utensils with regard to the, Department of Health. So, I mean, plating it initially, so I'm trying to address the board's concerns. What would the board like to see potentially?
I'd like to see that if you're advertising, put in a bistro in, that it's a bistro and not a deli, because right now it's a deli.
Or a
Nothing
bakery.
more, nothing less, it's a deli. You have to have table service, you have to have waiters, waitresses for a bistro. In my definition of it, I don't want another deli there, and it's not fair to a deli down the road or up the road that, you're gonna do the same thing by special permit by disguising it as a bistro. I can't go with that.
Our application was for a bistro it shall be, a deli it will not be.
What you got
have
up to the
right-
podium and stated is you were gonna have salads, soups, and sandwiches.
Yeah.
That's a deli. People
No,
could
well,
come
that's-
in,
yeah.
buy their food, and leave. People could buy their food and sit down and eat. That's a deli.
Well, again, if, and this is what, and I'm trying to, work with the concerns of the board, if it's plated, as opposed to, and in a deli, the difference is you can walk into a deli, you can ask them to, you know, there are pre-made sandwiches, which this is not.
There's gonna be no pre-made food.
No, we make everything.
Correct, so,
I mean, I'm not talking about shipped in, there will be everything will be made to order.
Yeah, if someone comes in and wants something, there's
But
no package.
will there be anything pre-made? Will there be pre-made sandwiches? Will there be pre-made salads? Will anything be in a container that is pre-made?
No.
Or will it be all just, you go to the counter, you order, the sandwich will be made at that time for that particular person? Nothing will have been assembled prior?
No, I mean, there's preparation, you know, with salads in the back, but,
Well, there's,
There's
yeah, I
no,
mean, you can cut your tomatoes up, but there'll be no sandwiches pre-made in any type of package for somebody to walk and buy.
and again, for the board, it will be on plates. When they come in, it'll be on plates. Now, there will be for lack of a better term, an enforcement. If someone sits down and say eats half their sandwich, but then wants to leave and take it with them, and understanding the concern, but initially, it will be we can do it on a disposable plate if that's what the board.
Well, they would have to, if somebody, a waiter or a waitress would come by and they'd say, I'd like to take this food with me, and then it goes in the back and gets wrapped, or they come over and hand the container at that point. That's what happens at a bistro, as opposed to having it being wrapped, you just take it off your plate and stick it in a paper bag and go.
Correct, no, and again, what your question is, what would be, made to order as opposed to and I think, I didn't get to, you know, in a deli, you can walk in their prepackaged sandwiches that you can, in plastic already, that you take to go, and that's it. That is not the idea here for the bistro.
And that's a convenience store. That's not a deli. No deli I go into has a sandwich already made up, sitting there saying, here, take me. I want my sandwich made fresh. That's what a deli does. That's
Well,
what
that's what we
that's
would do.
exactly.
But they wrap it
That's my
in
point.
paper and put it in a paper bag, and then you can go.
I mean, there are health department rules about, you know, if someone comes, you know, you got a plate, or it depends on what they're ordering, you know. But as far as the deli, the only,
Dawn is bringing that to us for
the only
deli.
stuff that we would
The deli.
have is local, like potato chips, some soft drinks, some iced tea. That's it. I don't have pretzels, and I don't have this, and I don't have all the packages that you see in the deli. I've been going to delis for 50 years. We're nothing like a deli. you can call it what you want, we're looking for a bistro, for people to come, sit
Then
down,
make it a
eat it.
bistro.
Yeah.
Have waiter service, have waitress service, that's a bistro,
Well, that's,
a deli is not.
when people go, they come up to the counter, they'll place their order, quite frankly,
And then it can be
No
delivered
one-
to the tables?
nobody can afford a waitress sitting there or standing there. There is no labor available anywhere, nowhere.
Mr. Gabrielson, come on.
No, this is
No,
not the
that,
game.
That's-
no, we
that's-
got restaurants
that's a
around
pretty
here,
poor
they have,
description.
There will be, and again, with the bistro, there will be staff to help. Now, whether or not, again, we're trying to, we work with affairs of the board, and I understand the difference between now, my question is, with regard to, the James Ford Vineyard, is there with their bistro? Are they having waitresses and waiters?
They have staff that comes and takes your order, and that's what a bistro is.
And they also gave us the layout of the complete inside of what it would look like, prior to their approval, I believe where their tables were and everything else.
We've done that a couple years ago.
But, you know, the market, the way you have set up is, I mean, if you're saying that you're having, produce and you're having, what else did you say? Produce, pies, you know, where is this 60% that's in there for produce and pies, and how is that being laid out in the building? You know, the way, you know, I mean, you can understand us being leery on this, I mean, so, you have to work with us here. So the layout that you currently have in the establishment does not support what you're saying with the produce, where the racks are and stuff like that. I think for a comfort level for the board, we need to see what it is and what it's gonna look like inside to understand what it is you're asking to do.
Well, we already submitted a plan which shows the seats are in the back section.
And I know that back section was your produce
Yeah.
section and is incredibly small, so if you're changing that over, how are you doing that? That's my question.
Well, the back is 600 square foot. We're allowing 200 and change for the bistro, and then the other half would be produce.
you're saying you have no table service.
What?
You have no table service, is what you're saying?
No, they would come to the counter.
So if
They
you're,
would come to the
I mean, for
counter
me,
and-
if you're not having table service, you're not having a bistro, straight up.
What I'm trying to say is, they
That's
come
just
to
the
the
bottom line.
counter, and whatever they prepare, then we would bring it over to the.
Correct, it's ordering at the counter as opposed to,
Taking the order.
taking the order, that's all.
So you're saying you are doing table service?
Someone will, but
No,
someone,
they're saying no table service.
Well, this is one's saying table service, the other one's saying no.
Well, the way we would do it, is they come up to the counter, they order what they want. It takes a little bit of time to put together, and then we would bring it to the table. I'm not like, here's the order on the counter and here's your order and go. We would make the order and then bring it over to the
So
table.
you will allow no pickup for food at the counter? You'd agree to that?
Yeah, for the bistro, yeah.
What's the
if someone wants
difference?
to make-
It's still not table, that's not table service,
Well, it's,
for me,
well,
that's not a
well,
bistro.
well, what is the, and
That actually is more like a deli, right?
Sit-down service. When you sit down, somebody comes and takes your order. I mean, this isn't difficult to explain to people, I think we've been pretty clear with this. This is a deli, what you're proposing is a deli. What I wanna see is a bistro.
well,
okay, so if we agree to have someone to serve the tables, then that's fine.
Then
That's what you're saying.
that completes my argument for this particular
Okay.
part of your application.
Okay.
There's more.
I mean, we can supply, if this is what it's gonna take, I can supply someone to go over to the table, can I help you?
Well, we'd like it written out as a plan, what it is that you're proposing, because we'd like to see that what we're saying to you is understood and clear.
You can do that as a condition of a special permit. It's a special permit.
Right,
We
so
have-
I would
We have a
li-
right to impose conditions and, you know, we have that authority. So I don't think we need a plan per se, if you wanna just lay
Well,
out conditions of what you would do as far as an approval.
But
We can do that.
I think one of the issues is that we wanna be clear on our understanding and what the conditions are, so I would like a plan written by them, how they plan to run this bistro. Because I would like to see that their understanding is the same as our understanding, so I would like to see their plan for being able to to do the service for the bistro, because
With a
that's what we're
menu.
asking.
Well,
With a
well,
menu, with specials and things of that nature.
well, let me ask you this question, would, and I understand your plan, if, Mr. Kevich and I work out and work on language for the conditions with a special permit, would that suffice? Because that,
I think it needs to start with your plan on what you plan on doing, it's your business. You must have a business model of what you're gonna do in this market. So I would like to see exactly what the plan is for the market. If it's 60% vegetables, how are you gonna do that there? What's it gonna look like? You know, if you're gonna do deli service, or you're doing the bistro service, you know, you've heard our comments here. We would like to see how you're addressing that. You know, you're asking for the permit to be able to do this, so I would like to know what it is you're planning on doing, so that we can review it properly. That you know, and that may be what it is, but.
Or open it up, just open the public hearing. But it clearly says that a bistro is an eating establishment of 50 seats or less. So that means that's where you go and you eat,
yes,
okay? So, and I've been dealing with the Glass Greenhouse for many years, and it started out as a farm market, and then it blew up into something else, and then, you know, Ag and Markets came back and said they can do this, and then we've been going back and forth in litigation for years. There was, you know, where you were serving bacon, and then you bought Macoun hens or pigs, so that you could say that you were using the pigs for the bacon, and then there were, you know, chickens laying eggs, so that you could say that that's how you made the egg sandwiches. I mean, it's been going on for a very long time. And then there were the macaroons that you were making, that you were saying that you were using the eggs from the, you know, from the farm to put in the macaroons. So I don't wanna see it turn into a bakery. I don't wanna see it turn into a deli. And that's why I think that it needs to be clear exactly what you're doing, and it says eating establishment. So if the person, you know, that's there is behind the counter and somebody sits down, they give them a menu, they say, I'd like to order this, then they go back, they make it, they bring it out. There's no deli counter, there's no bakery counter, there's no, you just don't see that in a bistro. So that's how I see a bistro. And the town has spent a lot of money in litigation over the years in all of these shenanigans, and what I have asked the town attorney, in order for me to vote for the special permit, is I wanna be reimbursed our litigation fees for
We've talked
trying
about
to
that.
bring you into
Again,
compliance with the
I
code.
didn't wanna get into the litigation,
Okay.
cause honestly, I have been talking to Jared about that, and as far as what the town's position is proceeding on that matter, I think that's more suited for an executive session discussion.
Agreed.
We had that discussion, I've had some ongoing discussions with Mr. Weber about that, and I
Yes.
think we are getting closer to
Okay.
reaching terms and conditions of a settlement that I can bring back to the board and have further executive sessions, so I'd rather keep that aside and deal with the special permit, since that's the issue that's before you today.
yes, I agree, and again, we've been, had an ongoing dialogue, for the last 2 weeks with regard to all aspects. So I would say that, and you raised, now that we've fleshed out the idea of the service, you know, the mode service, you had mentioned that there are some other issues that you have?
Well, that's one of them.
Okay, anything else not pertaining to that?
No, I have to approach this whole application with a lot of caution because of what it's been in the past. So, I'm gonna tread very carefully on this and don't expect it to be an easy run.
We are the gatekeepers of our zoning.
No, I understand.
Special permit is just that, you know, it's permitted in a zone under special circumstances. And in doing so, we need to be very, very clear of what it is that we're approving. Right now, it's unclear what it is that we're looking at here. This is the definition of a deli. So, and this comes from, the ZBA. So it's an establishment which sells prepared, preserved, and prepackaged food in a ready-to-consume state, including but not limited to meats, prepared sandwiches, soups, salads, desserts for immediate consumption, primarily off premises. A customer sitting area of no more than 16 seats may be utilized. Specialty boxed food items, sundries, beverages, uncooked meat, uncooked vegetables may be sold on an ancillary basis, while alcoholic beverages may be sold. The service of same is strictly prohibited. Hours of operation are limited from 5 a.m. to 11 p.m. I think there tends to be a lot of crossover in what you're saying and the definition of a deli.
I think
we'll get this to the whole board.
honestly, this sounds like what you're doing.
Well, I would, if I may, this starts at sells prepared, preserved, or packaged food in a ready-to-consume state. This,
I would say deli meat, cured deli meat, is that prepared?
Your bag of potato chips is packaged.
Just quickly, also, I think one of the things that may, and I haven't read that definition in a while, I'm sorry, I just printed it
Yeah.
out last minute.
Yeah, sorry to catch
No,
on the
it's
spot.
all right, it's just, you know, no table service in a deli, I think is really, like, no wait staff in a deli would be something, that would be, I think, something to think about. You know, I think that's a significant difference in a restaurant. Right.
That's what we're saying,
That's
that's
what
exactly what we're saying.
I'm sorry,
And you're telling me no table
conversations,
Yeah,
so I
no.
don't know what got spoken about before.
So, I understand that you're anxious and you'd like to get this moving forward, but as I said, I think this is very unclear. I think the board is saying to you that we are not comfortable with what you're presenting to us for this special permit. I think you have some homework to do to go back and flush out what it is that you want to do there and what are you actually asking for as this special permit. So I think that's kind of where we stand right now. Am I off on that?
No,
But another question that I have is, where are you growing vegetables? Are you growing vegetables on the property? Cause I know that you were a flower nursery, so if 60% of what you're selling inside the farm market is going to be vegetables and
Yeah, it's ours,
produce.
we buy local stuff.
What, you
local
buy
vegetables.
local stuff?
She's asking if you're growing.
We grow some of it. We can't, because you have to continually have a crop going. So we are buying local produce to fill in what we don't have. I have an orchard there, we have bees, we have chickens, vegetables, we grow some in the spring, when I have my whole crew in there. And then we fill in with local stuff.
Right, but the whole ag and markets for the farm market or for the farm stand says that you're growing it on the premises, and 60% of what you're selling in the farm stand or farm market is grown on the premises, and then 40% is brought in from other sources.
Well, see now, in November, we closed the greenhouses down because it's too expensive to heat. So we moved all that into the market. All our poinsettias, all cyclamen,
Okay.
all our house plants get moved into the market.
Okay.
So it's seasonal what's in there.
Okay,
I mean, I got over 1,000 poinsettias in there, I got cyclamen in there, I have all house plants in there.
okay,
So everything is moved from the greenhouse because of expense into the market
okay.
where we sell it. So seasonal, it's where it's at.
I just wanted clarification on that, on what's being grown on the premises.
So, but I think to Jody's point, I think the 60% is year-round. If you're gonna be open year-round, that 60% needs to be produced.
Yeah, it
Year
depends
round,
on what season it is.
Right, no, well, it doesn't, what you grow, what you have in there is dependent on what season it is, but the 60% is not dependent on anything except for the fact that you're required to have if you're gonna be
Yeah, no, I
open,
understand that.
60% of it needs to come from your property.
Yeah,
So whether it be
There.
half flowers, half vegetables in the summer, and all flowers in the winter, you know, whatever it is, it's supposed to be grown on the premises, the 60%.
But it seems to be that with the changing of the seasons, as you just mentioned, be it vegetables or plants, there's always going to be that 60%.
Yeah,
I
I mean, you
think
can have a very
cross-
large farm, so you can grow several things and bring it into the market. I'm just saying that, you know, there's a lot of people that have a lot of eyes on this, and a lot of people that are gonna be coming in saying, he's doing this, or he's doing that, and that's something that we're gonna have to deal with down the road as far as enforcement. So what I'm saying is that 60% of what you sell in this market is supposed to be produced on the premises. So, just
that I'm aware of
to
that.
make it clear.
So we'd like that addressed also, how you plan to meet that requirement.
Now also, the pink elephant in the room is the issue of the CO, which has not been issued for 5 years.
Well, I think this goes back to the executive session, or no, this is addressed here?
Well, the CO, I know I've had a number of discussions with council, and, we've never taken action to, close the operation down, and I know that the CO issue is one that's out there. I thought, well, we discussed it as possible, to be encompassed as part of the settlement, and I've had that discussion with council.
So, yeah, so I think that issue is ongoing and the ball is in your court.
Yeah, but this is 5 years now.
But I believe the ball is in your court, you have
Well, we've
been,
been in court and neither side's moved it, so, I mean, if this was something that was, you know, a concern, we could have been moving forward in the litigation. The litigation, the critical issue was the question of the CO and the question of the use.
Right.
And in our hand, that, we took the position that you weren't entitled to it because your operation was contrary to the zoning. So that was our position. Your position is you were in compliance with zoning. Both sides could have moved under the litigation. The litigation is still out there, and it's an issue that either has to be resolved in litigation, or we go back to court and
So
ask the judge to resolve it for us.
so I don't wanna,
that's
I
where we
don't know
are.
how much of this is, when we're getting into the finer details, but you understand what Mr. Kozakevich said? And so
Yes.
you can make a decision, you don't have to make a decision right
No, no,
here, and how you wanna follow up.
No, there's no decision to be made at this point, based on our conversations. I think that for the town and for the application and for Mr. Gables, and I think the best thing is to have an expeditious and for lack of a better term, settlement on all these issues. So if we can satisfy the town board very quickly with regard to, table service, you know, your layout, whatever it may be.
Well, I think we're talking two separate issues here now.
No, we
And as
are.
Mr. Kozakevich had said, these are two separate issues that we're not combining in this discussion, so.
Correct, yes, but I think the goal is that to have a resolution for everything, meaning working on multiple fronts, but but again, we're at the 60/40 compliance, an inspector was out, I believe, right before our August 7th hearing or right after, there's
I
compliance.
believe it was the August 11th, he
Yeah,
was
and
out there somewhere in that area.
and I think-
It was after after the public hearing.
Yeah, and I think we're being very clear, you're asking for a special permit, and we are not comfortable with the past history, with the information you've provided us, to issue a special permit. And we would like you to answer the questions that we've asked, and come back to us. I think that's where we sit with that. I think separately, I think Mr. Kozakevich has been working with you to address the issue of the CO. And I think that if you would like to continue conversations together, about that,
I fully plan on having further conversations
I think that the
with
board-
him, and again, on the CO issue, it's my feeling, and I hope Mr. Weber will agree, that if we can resolve in the court action, that would be part of the resolution and stipulation of settlement. If we can't, then that'll be an issue we'll put in front of a judge, and either you'll prevail on whether you're entitled to the CO, or we'll prevail on our argument that you're not using the property in conformance with zoning. And that's where we are in that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think that's it in as short and brief way as I can state it, and again, I, based upon my conversations with Mr. Weber, I think we can work out a stipulation.
I think
Okay.
it's not going to be.
And just in response to what you said, we're looking for you to address all the specific issues. We are not looking to throw it all in a pot and rush it all. I understand your point on a timeline, but all the different issues have to be addressed. Specifics.
No, I understand. I understand, and again, not for the work session, you know, the litigation that Mr. Kozakevich and I will discuss.
Okay. Any other questions, any comments? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bob, I think you're up here for the next one. The next one is chapter 255 for Red Frog events.
I think we're gonna take that off the agenda and put it on for next week, is that what we understood?
No, Red Frog, this person couldn't be here, so that's canceled, but
Okay.
we're still paying.
But do we wanna even address that though?
I'm not
I
sure
don't
it makes
think-
sense to do it without them here.
No,
They're going to, this chapter 255 is coming in, it's a large event that is not meeting the date, and this is just to kind of brief the board on what's going on with some of these 255s. They're not meeting their date for this, as far as their 40 days out, the 120 days out, I forget which one they are for this one. So there were a lot of questions, do they fall out of the 40 days if they come next week?
Well, the problem with this one is we don't have an absolute clear question or answer. The code, which I'm bound by, which this board's bound by, which we're all bound by, is very clear. It says 1,000 at any given time. It's not 1,000 for the duration of the event.
Correct,
And that's what we're trying to clarify.
okay.
So the answer is, I don't know. I don't know if it's the short or the long, because I don't know what their specific plan is. I've heard mentioned that it's more than 1,000 for the entire event, but we don't know specifically what will be there at one given time. As this board knows, these type of events are in waves, and they limit the number of people who come throughout the day, because you can't put them all out on the course at one time.
And right
So I
now,
don't know.
alcohol doesn't affect the time limit.
The alcohol is not impacted by
by
this,
this,
because
okay.
that's a separate issue.
Okay,
But, so I don't know. I don't know whether they, you know, if we delay it 1 week, whether we're going to have a problem, because I don't know if it's a long form or the short form.
okay, but even with the short form,
255
are we
at
out,
this
we're not out of the 40 days?
No, we're okay on that, I
Okay.
think.
Okay. Alrighty,
All right?
yep.
Thank you.
And then now we will move on to the secret scoping overview with Jeff Murphy and Mr. Seaman, Greg Berman.
Good morning,
Is Greg doing it? No, no, okay, thank you.
So far.
Yay! Good morning.
Good morning.
Perfect.
And this is just an overview, do you wanna introduce it, or would you like? It's just an overview of the secret scoping overview, because, we do have projects coming through, and we just wanted to review how the town board does this, just a little informational session for all of us, this, for us. Sure.
These are,
On your
thank
own.
you.
Wait, here's another one.
Yeah.
So,
Do we have anything?
I'm gonna hand this out also. This is
Okay.
the draft scope that Mushnick actually. So the planning, department acts as a clearinghouse and as a guidance group on behalf of the lead agencies under SECRET. And with respect to scoping, after an application receives a positive declaration of significance, requiring that a draft impact statement needs to be prepared, typically the applicant is advised and they submit a draft scope. From the date of that draft scope, the lead agency has 60 calendar days with which to issue a final written scope. Now, an extension can be granted if the lead agency formally writes to the sponsor of the application and requests an extended period of time. The sponsor does not have to agree to that. So assume that for any application that receives a positive deck, that we get a draft scope, there's 60 days from the date that's stamped in with clerk. So what I have done here is just sort of outline some of the requirements under SECRET, and primarily it's this 60-day time frame to be aware of, because if a lead agency decided that it wanted to have a public scoping session, it's not a hearing, it's not subject to hearing rules, that is an opportunity for the public to comment on the draft scope. The draft scope has to be circulated to all involved agencies and anyone interested in the project that submits a request for the draft scope.
So this gets put on our town website, under the planning as a as the draft?
If the board wishes to do that, yes.
Now that we have the dates for this application, we can do that. We're waiting till you confirm the dates. The dates are now confirmed for the scoping sessions, which
Okay.
Jeffrey's gonna talk about.
For this
Okay.
application? And when was this application submitted?
The application itself?
Yeah.
It was last year.
Okay, cause I thought that the town attorney said that it would only be for new applications coming in going forward that the new secret laws would apply to. He said that at the public hearing.
So this is under the prior New York State secret requirements, if the application in question.
So
I mean,
the,
I was just going to discuss this in a generic manner.
Yeah, this is just an overview for us, and then we have a particular project to address it to.
okay, so,
And this
There was
particular
never-
project comes in as a type 1 because of the nature of the project, not because of any new legislation.
Okay, so but are they going to be subject to all of this?
Absolutely.
Yep.
Okay, so they haven't had a scoping yet under secra?
No, because we got the
That
draft
clarifies
scope on September 4th. We circulated to the town clerk and to you.
Just back up a little bit though.
Sure.
So they submit, when Jody says, when did they submit their application? So they submitted a complete application, or did they just submit they just submitted the draft environmental impact statement, correct? They submitted an application,
Well, going back to just the scope, the date of their application is almost immaterial.
Okay.
Once the lead agency issues a positive deck, and, meaning an impact statement must be prepared, the applicant was advised, in this case, of that by resolution.
What date was that?
I had that written out,
I
I
think it was
believe
back
it was
a couple months,
May.
yeah, May or
I
so.
believe it was May, within the first 2 weeks of May, you issued, I think it was, resolution 336. So you had already assumed lead agency status, you issued a positive deck, they were noticed of that. There is no time frame between that notice and their date of preparing a draft scope.
Okay, I just am trying to
Right.
understand going forward, so that,
So their draft scope was submitted, and stamped in on September the 4th.
oh, okay,
So if you were using this as an example,
Yes.
60 calendar days from September 4th brings us to, I think, November 3rd, because October has 31 days. So on or before, November 1, say, a final scope would be prepared
so they
by the
didn't,
lead agency.
so they didn't submit a voluntary draft environmental impact statement?
There was a voluntary impact statement prepared that was not reviewed, accepted, or because you pos-decked it. So a voluntary EIS doesn't really look, an EIS that is submitted on a voluntary basis is the same as the long environmental assessment form.
Okay,
It's just considered an expansion.
okay,
Okay, go.
Oh, okay.
We're up to the
Okay.
60 days.
Yeah,
Do,
clear,
and do you, maybe what you wanna address is so that in that 60 days period, are you gonna address what the public scoping is and how that works?
Sure, so, it might be advisable to put the draft scope, on the website and solicit at least a notification to the public and any involved agencies or interested party as to what date a public scoping session, would be held. You can have more than one if it's convenient or the magnitude of the project or interest would warrant it. And then all of the public comments that come in and the comments from other involved agencies, are taken into consideration by the lead agency. You can incorporate them into a final scope or ignore them. Again, the public scoping session is about the scope itself. You will receive many people that are supporting or against the project, but it's really only limited to what needs to go into the scope. Now, the scope has to define, some basic information about the existing conditions, a full description of the project, what the significant environmental issues are that need to be addressed. But it also has to address the methodologies in how those issues are going to be validated so that as reviewers, the lead agency has an opportunity to weigh the metrics of what these impacts are and what level of mitigation would be proposed. For example, traffic is an easy one. Historical traffic studies could be used through a literature search. You could expand upon that and ask for actual peak hour counts, and you could expand upon that even further by putting in continuous traffic counting devices in order to get readouts on a 24-hour basis. So usually depending upon the particular environmental issue and its significance as it relates to the project or the community that it's built in, that will reflect how significant you want that area studied.
And then I just have one, cause when the draft environmental gets sent to the other agencies, what is their timeline for responding to that? Do they have the full 60 days to respond
If-
also, or?
If they give no response, generally, it's placed in the letter that they have no comment on the draft scope. If they do respond with input, that's acknowledged and taken into consideration. However, the lead agency has the responsibility to get the written scope out in 60 days. So if they come in day 59 with a long list of issues, and it doesn't quite make it, there is, or it comes in day 61, there is an avenue, under SEQA to, if it's justified, incorporate that into the scope.
Right, but we usually request that they return their comments back within 45 days, right?
Well, they have the
To
full 60.
outside agencies. No, I'm saying,
They're
like,
generally,
when we send out,
most agencies don't provide, too much comment on the draft scope.
cause I thought when we send things out to Suffolk County Planning, they have 45 days to,
Well, that's for, I think, other actions under SEQA. You can ask for a shorter period of time, but they have the same 60-day time frame that the lead agency does.
right, but I think it would be wise to request it within 45 days, so that we have at least 2 weeks to review what they're asking for, to
Yes.
include it in our scope.
Sure.
So, when we send it out to them, if we could request that they get the information back within 45 days, I think that would be helpful, and there wouldn't be any last-minute scrambling on day 59.
Well, I think by law, you probably have to do the 60 days, so we could say we request your reply by the 45th day, but the final day is, whatever the 60 days.
These have, been issued, to most of the involved agencies already.
We've been getting comments.
Almost within 48 hours of receipt, so they have them. We can back it up with an email, requesting a response within 45 days.
So they have their draft scope?
As clearinghouse, we're expected to send out, the draft scope to, you received it, each of you received it as lead agency. And the involved agencies have also received it.
And just for clarification,
And
the involved agencies, how are those determined?
So an involved agency is anyone that needs to make a decision, with respect to funding, permit approval, a grant, for example, or any other, action within their jurisdiction. An interested party is just someone who may have a casual interest in the project.
So this includes both our planning department, planning board and our zoning board would be getting, even if somebody wasn't asking for a variance on something, they would all be considered within the lead, interested parties?
Yes.
Okay.
And landmarks and ARB.
And yes.
Landmarks, ARB, we've already received some
Yes,
comments
yeah.
from them, so, yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Actually, internally, we're trying to make sure that we have a good circulation pattern so that things don't come up much later in the process that is often a disadvantage to the applicant as well, because they have certainly not thought of everything. And they're not expected to. I would emphasize that, the board take, good consideration into the alternative section. That's usually, the area that if there are other, magnitude of size of a project, density of a project, parking is, well, whatever the main issues are, it's in the alternative section that you can really shake out a comparative analysis between what's being presented and what some other alternatives could be.
So, in downtown, we were successful in creating a National Historic District. So, I presume that any projects that are downtown, that draft scope would also go out to the State Historic Preservation Office?
Yes.
Oh, yep.
Okay.
Is there do we get the full list of does everybody get the full list of everybody, how you have that one column in the
It's on
back?
the back page, yeah.
We,
Right? it's not on this one.
well, they,
was in the email.
in their draft scope, I believe they listed, the permitting agencies, but,
Okay.
we have a circulation list. And in some cases, when we send it out, we get a different name and we adjust the list and get it modified, and people are moved around, especially in the state offices. So we have that pretty much covered. We can provide that to you, so that you know exactly who's involved, as a permitting or an approval, or in this case,
Or
a
just
funding
the
agency.
the agencies that received it, just so we're
Sure.
aware.
And it's on page 4 of your draft scope, and
Thank you.
we already gotten one comment back from one of the agencies that, they are not the right contact person, it was another person part of the
Okay.
agency, so it's being refined.
Okay,
The idea is to make it as public as possible, because it is under SEQR supposed to be a public participation type process.
Yeah,
So,
SHPO's not on here.
so placing it in, SHPO only accepts it, via special email address, so it's probably why
They want,
They didn't place it on,
they don't
I'm not
accept
sure.
comments, through the mail anymore, you have to do everything through their electronic submission requirements now.
okay.
Well, they had concerns about this property because it was the old Sears site, and they wanted to see the front wall remain, and they considered it intentional demolition for a new project, so that's why I think it's very important that SHPO gets involved in this.
Well, you did send it off there, it's just not in the,
State Historic
Well, it's
Preservation.
not on their
but it was
list,
sent,
but
it
yes,
was sent to
yes.
them, okay.
They have their list, we have our list,
We
our
have,
list is
our list
larger
is
than
much
theirs.
more expansive
Okay,
than their
okay.
submitted list.
Okay.
While we're all here and we're talking about the public scoping meetings, while the press is here, I think it's a good time to announce when those dates are going to be. There are gonna be, 2 public scoping meetings, and they're gonna be on the agenda with the regular town board meeting dates. The first one's gonna be on Tuesday, October 2nd at 2 p.m. or thereabouts, the time why we have, the agenda obviously has not been established at this point, but it would be, that's an afternoon meeting. The second scoping meeting will be Tuesday, October 16th, and that's a nighttime meeting, and that's the first 6 p.m. meeting. And I'm looking at Diane to confirm that.
Yes. And the reason the meetings were chosen, there was an afternoon and an evening meeting, so that there's, people will be able to get here. And now, can people also write in with
Yes.
this?
Absolutely.
Yes,
Okay,
you're encouraged, actually, to do that. Emails are acceptable. Anything that we can assemble on paper so that we can, scan it, put it in the file, and also to, sort of, some of the comments that you may receive will be, duplicates of other agencies or other people who have already made the same comments, so we'd like to sort of just stack those up to see where the concentration of comments are coming from.
and so my question is, once we get this and the 60-day clock starts rolling, any comments that come in during that 60-day period, are then reviewed, or is there,
By you, the town board, and it's
Okay.
important, you'll be getting comments that are not relevant, they're gonna be off target. You, the town board, get to say what the scope is going to be.
I understand that, but I'm just wondering if, how does it work with the comments coming in? Do you
They go
get,
to the town clerk, we get
that's what I'm
copies
saying,
on it.
they go to you?
We glean through them, and it's just said, we're gonna get duplicative, overlapping comments, we'll summarize those back to you, you're gonna get them firsthand.
But you then take all of it, so they come to your department also
Traffic
for,
will be there, and
for
then we'll
consideration.
break that down.
Right, they will go to the clerk, but copies will come to us as that clearinghouse mechanism, and then we'll assemble them for you so that you can sort of get the whole
Makes more
scattering.
sense of them, a little easier than
If we
yes,
get a
you're
stack
getting
like this, you don't
bombarded
need a
with them.
stack of paperwork like that, we'll give you,
Right.
you know, the 3 or 4 page outline as to what
We
is
appreciate
missing
that.
from.
Yeah, but that goes back to my question, so the comment period for the public in a scoping, public scoping starts, is
already
from,
started.
that's what I'm saying, so it's from now till the 60th day. Obviously, as we say with other things, we love everything in by the 45th day, but everything, that's the time frame that the public has to comment on the proposed project.
Yes, and be mindful, the lead agency has to issue that written scope, and we would assume you would adopt that by resolution at a town board meeting, so you need to sort of bake that into your plan as to when those dates would be, if you're going to have a special town board meeting simply for the adoption, for the record, and then circulation. Because looking at some of the dates, I think October 16th is the last town
meeting
Yeah, I
in
think,
October?
I think because that cuts off easy, because there would be 3 meetings in October, so you don't have a late meeting, so I think, if the board is agreeable to it, and we feel that we wanna continue out to almost the 60th day, so that the planning department has, idea to comment, that at one of the work sessions, we could, I'm just trying to look at the date here.
Yeah, October 18th,
On,
the 25th,
or
October,
on November first,
Right,
will give us, beforehand, and if we can do it at a work session, this way everybody has
Yeah,
ample
the
time.
work session prior to, November first, you're
Right,
saying.
well, to
Right.
November
Okay.
3rd, so if we did it at the
Okay.
November first work session, we could
Oh,
adopt the
resolution.
the resolution, and then it can get sent out,
We'll
so
get
it's,
to you a
they're
week
received
ahead
by
of
the
time.
3rd.
And all of this will be responded to by the applicant in a draft environmental impact statement. And then that impact statement will be subject to, a review for acceptance to determine whether or not it meets the scope. The scope is sort of, are the ingredients. They deliver the cake, we take a taste of the cake, we see if it meets the ingredients. If it does, then that's circulated, for public review and comment on that. So there's ample opportunity that if something was not picked up in the scope, but sort of is expanded in, during the review process, it would have to be answered later on in the process when they prepare a final impact statement.
And once you receive their response back, does that become public hearing at that point, or it's still public comment at that point? When you, after you do that, right, so we send them our scoping requirements, they respond with their, statement, then we review that, and then there's a portion then that's open to the public to comment on. Is that a public hearing at that point, or is that still
Well,
part of a
there's
scope?
A really important step prior to all that. The draft EIS has to be deemed adequate for public review by you.
That's what I'm saying, so there's no, once you receive it back, there's no public comment whether we accept it or not.
Correct.
That's accepted by the board or not accepted by the board, and then it goes through. So if it was not accepted by the board, what happens at that point?
We respond back to the applicant with what we feel is deficient.
And still within all of the requirements that we sent out as our scope?
Yes,
Okay.
why we felt it failed to meet certain aspects of the scope.
Okay,
Then they respond to that, clean up whatever issues remain unanswered.
Is there a time
from the-
period associated to that?
We have, I think, 45 days to respond as to whether or not it's adequate or not. There is no time frame for them to respond back to those comments, because it gives them the flexibility to do additional legwork to put those pieces back into the EIS. It comes back to us, we have another 45 days. Those timeframes are expandable, again, by written notice to each parties. Certainly if you get a large EIS and it takes more time to review compared to a 40-page document, the applicants are usually understanding of that.
But we, if I can just interrupt for 1 second, we request additional time, and they have to agree to give us additional
Yes.
time. We
Yes.
can't just say, we need extra time to look at this.
Correct. And
but they're
you
also
need to-
required to pay for that, so if we needed to review that, and we needed to have somebody, that our review of it is covered by the applicant, correct?
Correct, but you need, go back to your question, Councilwoman, you need to respond well within that 45-day period.
Yes.
You can't wait until day 43 and say, oh, we need another 60 days. That, you know, we wanna give them
Right, absolutely.
adequate notice upfront for them to respond back, and typically they agree, they understand, the parameters. So after the draft impact statement is accepted, then it's released for public review and full comment, and then you have a hearing, on the EIS as well. Take those comments into consideration, plus all written comments. Now, the last thing on the scope, if it is going to be made available at any other locations other than the clerk's office, or typically it ends up in Riverhead Public Library, other institutions that you might find are equipped for the public to come in and review it, and or just the website. So we usually like to get at least a paper copy to the library for those that don't have access to the internet.
That's great,
Is
I
it-
think that's a good idea.
Is there any other, so normally just it would be at the town clerk's office, on our town website and the library. Is there any other thoughts that anybody would like it anywhere else? No, I think we're okay? Okay, alright.
So, just a question, because, you know, there are a lot of projects and there are a lot of zoning districts where you can build from property line to property line. So, if you're not looking, I guess you are looking at a full engineered plan as far as where runoff is going and, where drainage structures will be, or cisterns, or, you know, anything in compliance with the stormwater pollution prevention, with New York State DEC. So, all of those are addressed in our scope back to them?
This is your opportunity to ask for anything that you feel is, reasonable and adequate to address every one of those issues.
Okay.
So the answer is yes.
If you want full engineer drawings, they have to give us full engineer drawings, if that, in order to answer your question, absolutely.
Yeah, but, so they're not submitting full engineered drawings for the drainage when they submit the application in order to make the application complete?
Well, that's part of a site plan review process, that's also under the umbrella of this application. Those two, the EIS and the plans need to be compatible with each other. You can't make a statement in the EIS that's, a generic in nature and say, all drainage requirements will be met. Well, if you're in a flood zone and drainage is a main concern of the lead agency, you can ask, and that's why the methodologies, are important to describe, and you can ask for complete, engineering analysis and calculations to show that the drainage is adequately, handled at the site.
Okay,
Yes, yes. So even if it's not on a plan, it needs to be in the document itself with full calculations.
okay, thank you.
Obviously, that will include the map and planning for sewer also, if sewer is.
Sewer, yes. Parking, building heights, building mass, bulk, architectural, landscaping, all of it.
So how does that work if parking is not a requirement in the zoning district?
Under an alternative analysis, you can, and this has been done before, that if, well, some form of parking needs to be addressed, obviously there'll be vehicles that need to park someplace. So just simply by asking for a full description of how the applicant plans to manage their parking, and then in the alternative, you could simply state that if compliance with, typical apartment or multi-dwelling units were applied, what would that alternative look like?
Okay,
That's why the alternative is a very important section. And I always believe also the existing conditions are also important, that, enough information is updated, so that we know exactly where we are as we begin the process, take into account any other relevant projects that are planned within the area, and that has to be added in to see how the cumulative impacts are going to, work out among all of this area that is under study. And you also have the ability to ask for that area of study to be defined. Is it just next door? Is it 5 blocks out, 2 blocks north, 1 block south?
And I think that goes to your question where you're saying, you know, the public scoping session is on this project. Well, it's not just generally in the footprint of the project, it's also that cumulative effect. If you have several projects going on, how does that affect a particular area? Not necessarily whether you agree with a particular, zone that we have or something like that, but it doesn't negate the fact that what's coming is all gonna affect each other.
no, I understand,
So-
like in the National Historic District, that was taken into or wasn't taken into consideration on a couple of applications that we've had downtown. Where you can look at surrounding properties and, scale and size.
Well, you can ask they go in and do an existing conditions assessment of particular historic buildings in order to document exactly where they are now, and, you know, how this may impact them going forward. One issue I've always, in all my years of practicing secret, have been concerned about, no one ever goes back and does sort of a monitoring or an evaluation on what the impacts are post-construction, to see whether or not the EIS came up with a reasonable prediction. For example, if the traffic consultant said that the level of service would go from an A to a B, and you go back 6 months or 8 months after it's built and it's an F, no one comes back with that
Right,
information.
so the same information going forward won't
Won't
alleviate the
exactly-
problem and
correct.
may even exasperate it even further.
Correct.
And so maybe the methodology wasn't
Correct,
necessarily what
but there
works in the town.
there are projects that, in the EIS review process and finding statements, determined that longer-term monitoring was required in order to continue to evaluate and assess the realistic impacts that that project created, with opportunities to make adjustments going forward.
Now Jeff, you're saying that we can assess like the whole area. Can we can also, I would assume, take into account the history of perhaps another project, like the other project where we had all the problem with the pilings,
Yes?
that we can take that into account for this project as well. I would
Absolutely.
assume.
Any historical information that's been learned, in this area, and when I say the area, it should be, reasonable, under SEQA, they say reasonable. So I don't think you could extend it out to Montauk Point and,
No,
the
but
edges of
certainly
Brooklyn,
next door.
Oh,
Is very reasonable.
Yes, yes, and, in fact,
And across the
Right.
street.
Yes,
And
yes.
across the street, that's what I'm talking
and
about.
in fact, the planning, some information that I've asked internally from the planning department has already, surfaced, quite a lot of comments about, the cumulative impacts of the two projects being so close, the type of piles, whether or not the piles will be necessary, building heights, everything, so, we'll filter that up to you, and refine it for you so that you don't have too much heavy reading to do, or repetitive reading.
And all of that goes in the alternative section?
All of that would probably go in both the existing conditions and the description of their project. We don't know what piles, or if they're proposing piles, installation. And construction-related impacts, that's also a separate section. Does the walkway, temporary walkway work? Is there adequate parking for, construction equipment, for their
Yeah, I
construction
mean, even
employees?
staging, I mean, we know the staging
areas.
area that we have
Yes.
going on now is not gonna be an appropriate staging area for this project, so, I mean, that's gonna, just that issue alone is going to.
And the very fact that there will be something in the space for the project under construction. So
Right.
that's, right now, both sites are empty, but,
Certainly,
and-
because they're next door to each other, we can look at the visual impact.
yes, and if the other building becomes occupied, how will this construction project impact those residents, because they are adjacent to each other?
Okay.
That's it.
Thank you very much, this was very,
you.
very informative. And I'm glad that the other agencies are commenting back.
Yeah,
Responding
very,
quickly.
Yeah,
very
it's very,
quickly.
it's encouraging,
Good job, Mr. Seaman.
thank you.
Better shirt this time.
Do we have the? Okay, all right, so we will move on to resolutions, and then we can go back. Is this the new, from the new, is this from Granicus?
It is.
All right,
so
do you
bear
wanna,
with us.
do you wanna just give a little preamble to this?
Okay, yes, we are using a new system, an agenda program, and to create resolutions and agendas. So bear with us as we work through this, because it's our first time at it, and I already see multiple issues that we need to tweak, but we'll move along. And it'll get better every time.
And for the next town board meeting, will we be live with this, or are we going to?
What is the change? Something is,
Oh, it's a software program that we're using, and actually, I think, John, is, Manny coming
Training
today?
this afternoon,
Yeah.
3:30.
Yes,
right,
so you'll,
so attachments will be a paperclip and not 900 pages, is that what it is?
something like that.
Okay.
And Diane's understating it, but if you look at the email you have right now, like you can click on the side, there's an appendix, you can click on a resolution, instead of having to scroll, like there's little agenda, kind of the way it looks, so you'll see a draft one there at the top of your email that can be edited.
Excellent.
No, what you have, you're not seeing.
You're
that
not seeing it
right
yet,
now.
we'll do the training today, and then it will go, yeah.
You'll have to
And that's
work-
3:30 today.
One of the things we have to work.
So how do I do my control F and then TV, oh,
It's gonna be easier, you'll just
It's
be able
gonna
to
be
put,
better, yes,
better,
it
yeah,
will be better.
yeah,
You can get some extra training.
all right.
Yeah, ask your
Gonna have to
questions.
put on the brakes for Laura's speed reading over here.
Yeah,
It'll be easier.
yes.
Authorizes, so I'll start, okay? 9-1, authorizes the supervisor to execute agreement to extend contract with Prestige Data Inc. 2 is accepts the resignation of a building permits examiner.
we're losing a good one, Patty.
Yeah.
Oh, Patty,
Oh, yeah.
I slip offered her a lot more money than we could afford.
God bless her.
9-3 is, authorizes acceptance of a donation.
Roofing hardware.
Paint for handicap.
What was that,
parking.
receiving paint for the handicap spots?
Yeah.
4 is appoints a part-time public safety dispatcher 1.
And that was from Griffin Hardware, by the way, if
Yes,
anybody's
yes,
watching the
yes.
paint donation.
Sorry about that, yes, thank you. 5 is authorizes town clerk to publish and post attachment notice to bidders for streetlight and traffic maintenance repair parts. 6 is terminates the employment of a temporary laborer.
Well, that's it then, you've lasted a long time.
7 is adopts a local law to amend chapter 289 entitled Vehicles, Traffic, and Public Regulations of the Riverhead Town Code 289-6, weight limit of 5 tons Parkway Street. 8 is authorizes town clerk to publish and post notice to consider a local law to amend chapter 217 entitled Building, Construction and Improvement, and Housing Standards, Article 1, Administration and Enforcement.
The legislation is not attached to this, and neither is the notice of the hearing. So before we schedule a public hearing, I'd like to review the legislation.
Sure, that was just an error when we were putting something in, so that's well presented, yeah.
Which one is that, Jody?
9.8.
Okay.
Okay, if you have reservations about it after you see it, please just let me know. And then we have, 9.9, which is authorizes supervisor to execute a license agreement with Woodside Orchards, Inc.
For parking? Yes, the parking lot
Yes,
they have it,
for
do
pumpkin
every
season.
year.
Yeah.
Yeah, they do it every year.
Some of mine are double attached, I'm just trying to. 10 is authorizes town clerk to publish and post a notice for bidders for calcium hydrochlorate tablets for the Riverhead Water District. 9/11 is approves the chapter 255 application of Little Flower Union Free School District Run to Save Young Lives 5K Run Walk Saturday, October 13th, 2018. See, everybody's got a new stamp on it. 9/12 is approves chapter 255 application of Railroad Museum of Long Island Wooden Toy Train Play Days, October 6th, 2018, and October 7th, 2018. 9/13 is approves the chapter 255 application of East End Rowing Institute, Snowflake Regatta, Sunday, November 4th, 2018. 9/14 is approves the chapter 255 application of Wading River Shoreham Chamber of Commerce, Wading River Fall Festival and Zombie Walk, Saturday, October 13th, 2018.
Better get your costume.
Okay, that's 15. Authorizes the supervisor to execute a license agreement with Darkside Productions, Inc. 16 is authorized to publish advertisement for charter coach transportation 2018 for the town of Riverhead. The different events.
For the recreation department?
Yep.
Oh, that's the rec
Yeah, that's the rec department for the events they hold. 9/17 is notice to bidders for heating fuel.
Can we have some today?
I know, it's freezing,
Yeah.
yeah. And 9/18 is bid for hardware items. What is that?
No, there's one more.
Okay, 19 is approves the attendance of 2 police department employees to a marine patrol vessel operations cost, MPVOC. Did you go light on the resolutions with the new system?
Well, it's Yom Kippur,
Yeah.
so we have
Do it
to
on purpose.
wrestle Homa.
Oi.
All right, so we're ready to move on? We have one more So this is the innovative alternative on-site wastewater treatment system, presentation. We have Joyce Novak, and is Justin, or just?
On the way.
Okay, okay,
So, since this is ready to go, I can start and then.
okay.
And what,
This is what we had, talked about previously. I think we had talked about the alternative, systems, and the board had requested that somebody come in and explain, what they were and how they work, so that's this.
yeah, because in speaking to Legislator Krupski, the Suffolk County Department of Health Services is not ready to require this because there are some glitches, so I personally think that we should wait until the Suffolk County Department of Health Services adopts their rules and requirements requiring these type of systems, because Southampton has adopted them, and they've changed the legislation several times since it's been adopted, and I just think it's, very onerous on property owners.
Well, I think that's why we've scheduled the presentation, so we could get an overview of what it is, and then we can have discussions and decide if it's something we wanna do, or something that we wanna wait on.
My
Well, it's
personal feeling is they pushed this through so quick, and already today, there are better systems
Right.
than what they originally presented as, these are the golden ones we need to move on with. It was just, to me, it was moved through too quick without doing not proper, but without allowing the
Well,
timeframe
I
to
think
take place for
the data collection from the
Right.
systems that they originally spoke of, I think was very, very much, very quick.
Love the idea,
but-
love
but-
the whole process,
yeah,
but it's just, it needs more time, I think, for them to come up with systems that are gonna be
I think there's a balance
appropriate
between the
for everybody
cost
to use.
and the benefit, and I think that's kind of what this is about, the cost and the benefit, and we need to decide for, I think much of this is home rule. I think that the towns, I don't necessarily know that this should be coming from the county. I think that each town should be able to make its own decisions on whether this is a requirement, for in our building. And I think that is something that should remain with the towns.
The town of Southampton, I think, has $8 million allocated towards alternative waste systems, and they've had it for about 4 years. And I think they've only spent $150,000 because people just aren't volunteering to sign up to change these systems. And I know that the county has also allocated money for grants to assist people in trying to do this, but, you know, people aren't grabbing onto it, and
We have triggers that we set up here that would almost, not force it, but create that.
well, that's why I think
Well,
that,
it's for the,
that's why I think Suffolk County Department of Health Services and Wastewater Management, who analyzes, you know, water quality, they analyze water lines, separation distances, they just rewrote Article 6 of the Suffolk County Department of Health Services Code since 1981, it hadn't been updated. And they just updated it, and they didn't include a requirement for these alternative waste systems, they just updated it January of this year. So, I'm interested in what you have to say, but as far as I'm concerned, with the maintenance program that's involved for homeowners in order to maintain these systems, and for seasonal homes that, you know, where the bacteria dries up, and getting the system to work again, and $500 a year maintenance on the systems is, very onerous on property owners.
I think that is exactly why we have asked you to come in and speak on the systems, to give us the pros and cons of these systems, and this way we are educated. And we can have a discussion about whether it's something that we wanna, entertain here, or it's something that we wanna wait to see what's gonna happen in the next 6 months or 1 year from now, so,
And while we're waiting for Justin, I'm gonna use it.
okay.
I'm still curious to see about the whole program, but.
Well, Justin can speak, more directly to the engineering side, the inner workings of the actual systems.
Okay.
My experience, with dealing with the public is sort of twofold. There's a lot of misconceptions about them. And it seems to be that nobody wants to deal with that part of management of their home. So it doesn't seem to be related to money so much as who wants to deal with that if there's nothing wrong with what you have. And that seems to be a driving factor. You know, you fix your roof because it leaks, you fix your windows because the breezes are getting in. You don't see it, and if it's not leaking or causing you a problem, people really don't wanna, it's a big thing to do. You know, it involves excavation, it involves, and it's just I think the largeness of that it's not broke, they don't
Right.
wanna have to deal with it. And that's what I think the bigger driving factor is. I will say, I hope Justin can speak to, there are a lot of misconceptions about the systems, especially when, it comes to seasonal homes and them having trouble working again, and that's really not the case. So I can speak to all of that, if not, I will do my best.
Okay.
To talk you through it. I'm gonna talk a little bit more about, just the quite, large need for them, you know, at this point when it comes to nitrogen.
The environmental advantages, absolutely.
Not just environmental, but, you know, we're a sole source aquifer.
Joyce, you know what, just before you start, would you, we are, could you just introduce yourself and where you're from?
Sure, I am Dr. Joyce Novak. I am the new director of the Peconic Estuary Program.
Does she need to use the microphone? It'll pull off there, I think, if you want.
Yeah, I'm Joyce Novak. I am the director of the Peconic Estuary Program. I started there in about May. A little bit of update. The Peconic Estuary Program was formerly, the director was a Suffolk County employee. I am no longer a Suffolk County employee. It gives us really a nice ability to partner well with everybody around the estuary. So I'm still housed in the Suffolk County offices. But so that's kind of the major change that's happened in the estuary program out here. So it's really allowed me to form stronger partnerships both with Suffolk County and then with individual towns, which is what I'm trying to do more of. And so I
Is this not loading, is that the?
don't know what's happening to my presentation.
Okay. Oh, okay.
So I was just gonna talk very briefly about the increasing need for, taking nitrogen or limiting the amount of nitrogen going into the system, both, for environmental reasons and for the aquifer. It's increasingly becoming something that we should be concerned about. So, just give me 5 more minutes.
And welcome, by the way. I guess I'll see you tomorrow morning, or next week, we have Peconic Estuary at 10 a.m. at Cornell, right?
Yes,
Yes.
yes,
So I will see you there.
okay.
I don't know who inside, did Tim not come? Jim? Jim said he was on here. Oh, okay. Do you know this? Do you wanna start and we can, up to you.
Up to me. I'll just give it another minute.
Okay.
Town Wi-Fi.
All right, Jim, this is where we ask you to sing.
Okay. What do you wanna hear?
What's your best song?
What's my favorite song? Probably Sweet Caroline, probably. What's that? Where it began, I can't begin. So you all thought the record was on, right? Right? You
John,
thought it-
can we
thought it had a record on, right?
attach this to one of the computers? Is it this room? Is it on a thumb drive? Can we download it and do paper copies?
Yeah, do you want to give me your thumb drive, and I can try and download it and print it for you right now? I'm gonna print you a copy, because there was an error in the packet, and the resolution, you don't have it, so we print the board a copy right now.
Okay.
It's the same one we tabled a couple months ago, and then we want to get more information. So I'm gonna print you some copies for you to look at, and then I'll try and print Joyce's presentation, and we can do that on our way.
Technical glitch.
Morning, Brad.
I bet if you took that and walked outside, it would.
If the board wants, I can give you a quick primer on where we interacted for the
Okay.
sanitary along the,
Okay.
What are you
And
talking
Brad
about?
steps up.
What are you talking about?
The state of affairs of where we're at.
Which one?
Well, this code actually, Councilwoman Giglio, put this forth a few years ago, where for the longest time, we were on the county regulations, where if you didn't increase bedroom size, you didn't have to upgrade your sanitary system. So we changed that to where if you're within the jurisdictional area of the CAC, so within 300 feet of the tidal wetlands or 150 feet of freshwater wetlands, and you were doing what we felt as a substantial renovation, even if you did not increase your bedroom count, we put this code in to where we can require you to put a real sanitary system in. So we've used this many times now,
A conventional sanitary system.
Right.
whatever system would be approved by by the health department, we didn't
Right.
specify. So we have enacted this legislation and we were putting it through as such. So what is in the packet today was to go a step further and do the alternative system. But I didn't wanna advocate for it, cause I hadn't really seen that many of them. I think we have 2 in the town.
And those are on pilots?
I don't
I
know.
think at Glenwood, they have a is it Glenwood? No, it isn't Glenwood, I'm sorry.
No.
They have the heating system.
They have the geothermal
The
system
thermal there, yeah.
There's one, we had one application for it, because we wanted to be able to track it, we're supposed to be able to track it also when the house is sold, because we have to know that they have a maintenance agreement on them, so. We're still not that familiar with them, that's why I didn't want to present, because I don't know.
And I think that's the exact reason why we're doing that. And the reason that it was switched over years ago was for the environment, to reduce the nitrogen, that would be running off,
No, it actually was not. The reason why it was switched over is because people were taking a one-story house that had 2 bedrooms in it and building a second floor on it and keeping 2 bedrooms, but on the first floor, they were putting in a new kitchen, a dishwasher, a washing machine, and all those things that were adding to, these old block systems that weren't even an updated conventional sanitary system. They were just the block systems, and the tide would just come in, and then it would wash all the nitrogens out into the water, so
There's like
that's,
a pipe into the groundwater.
right, so
Right.
these new systems did reduce the nitrogen
Well, they
going
went
in and brought them up to capacity.
They had a real tank and they had a real pool system, typically the shallow pool system when they're on the water, but something that was already approvable within the.
systems that were put in prior to Article 6 of the Suffolk County Department of Health Services standards that required a septic tank and a leaching pool.
So new builds or additional construction were required to conform to this, to update them to the systems that were.
New buildings, or if you were increasing the number of bedrooms above 4, were required to upgrade the sanitary system. So we said, 4 is not the threshold for us. If you have an old block system that doesn't have a septic tank and leaching pools, you're gonna have to do that if you're doing a substantial improvement.
Right, okay, very good.
Go back.
It's your choice if you'd like to sit here or sit in the audience.
You might have questions.
And that was in areas that were governed by the Conservation Advisory Council.
I can see my breath.
It's freezing, and it's usually colder in the audience.
Really? You
Seems
run
comfortable.
it
I wanna
like
live
102.
year-round in this, wherever this place
I have a
exists,
jacket in my
this is
room. You want a
perfect.
jacket? You want a jacket? I got a jacket in my office.
Is this,
Huh? Oh, no. I don't think I have
I was thinking,
I don't know why we run it so cold.
I'm not sure.
I don't have the key. Apparently, I'm not trusted with the
I'm
key.
not sure.
You would make it colder.
I'm gonna be here for
I'm with
10
Tim.
minutes of
Colder
this,
doesn't
and then
bother me.
I gotta go, and then I guess I'll watch it on, Channel 22 to see the presentation.
I can't speak to that.
They're not even looking at commercial yet, they're just working on residential still.
Would they have those 5 approvable pipes, or is that what we're gonna hear about now? Yeah, I think there's 5 that are approved for use.
Into executive session, you
That's what
can
I
come back
thought.
out if
That's
you
what
get
I
timed out.
Okay, I think
This is one item.
okay.
Okay.
There's a gentleman here.
Apologize.
Yeah, okay, so can we,
Justin, you have a paper version or your copies, maybe?
I'm just gonna try and print that.
all right, can I have a first and second to go to executive session, at which we will return back into work session, afterwards to continue. So a first and second to go into executive session?
I would like to hear this because I have to leave at 12, so, and then, Tim, or somebody can fill me in on what's happening with executive
They
session.
might not be
Well, I
ready
don't
by
think they're-
12.
Paper copy of that.
Yeah,
Okay, so,
He's got one there, I think he said he's gonna make.
yeah,
okay.
great. Because executive session could be 20 minutes,
Fair enough.
if it's what I think it is.
It's gonna be 3 minutes, is what I think it is.
Patrick, do you have it?
Thank you, I'm okay.
He's always saying finding the moon.
But I think you can get started, I think you have our better attention when we're not reading through documents while you're trying to explain what you're, what it is you're proposing.
Well, I just wanted to look at, I think it's gonna go back.
I think they're copying it now, you're.
Jeff, you laughed a little hard on that one.
You got all this.
Never give us anything to read while you're trying to get us to understand a point.
Technology is great. Already into the snacks.
Are we ready?
Already into
I
the
didn't go any
snacks.
What'd you think, we were in executive session, you went and got snacks
I found
already?
some fish. There's a snack closet there. I look forward to the executive session.
As I say, it's the only reason Jim comes to executive, like, provide him with food. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, how times have changed, huh? Yeah.
Sometimes I think we need one. We had a bottle of Widow Jane back there. No, I'm sure. Under his desk, right? God rest his soul. Oh, right there in the open for everybody.
Nothing like making this easier for you, Joyce.
Come on, Pat.
Who's making the copies?
I wanna make the color copy, sorry.
You know, I don't color.
Save
Save the toner.
Enough times where I think I can do it without PowerPoint, but hopefully this works.
What company are you with?
I'm with Suffolk County Health Department.
Oh, okay.
Boo. Sorry.
Oh,
Okay. You probably get that all the time.
I'm new to the health department.
Oh, there you go.
I'm the new, friendlier and.
You haven't been bruised yet?
Newer
Okay.
improved health
Really?
Are you one of about 4 employees they have?
No,
It seems like you're so backlogged with everything.
Backlog's
It's
down
tough.
to 4 weeks, 2 to 4 weeks.
Larry, are we live or you,
No.
you're pausing it?
Oh.
Oh, Lord. Watch the pound.
All
Are
right,
you
here we have.
an engineering analysis from wastewater or?
All right, here we go.
All right.
All right, still get going.
Patrick, just tell Catherine we're ready to go.
Move that,
Thing. All right.
So I can change my slides here.
but, so we did this part, I'm gonna talk a little bit about the nitrogen pollution in the Peconic estuary and the importance of needing to upgrade, household septic systems. So just roughly, the Peconic Estuary Program, I know that Riverhead also, is on the Long Island Sound, but this is the area, of the Peconics, and this is the entire watershed that we deal with. We do many, many things, but one of our largest mandates is water quality monitoring and research. And this deals with the atmospheric deposition, looking at nutrients, pathogens, toxins, algal blooms, how they affect habitats and wildlife, and loadings of nitrogen and pathogens specifically. Today, we're just gonna focus on the nitrogen. These are the sites that Suffolk County monitors. We work very closely with the water quality monitoring
Thank you, John.
program in Suffolk County, both with the gathering of samples and the analyzing of data. And just to give you a brief, this is a 10-year time period, 2005, 2014, nitrogen loading, and it is highest in this area, you know, in the Flanders Bay area. Sources of nitrogen, there are quite a few or several larger sources of nitrogen, agriculture, fertilizers, stormwater. Today we're going to be talking about or focusing on the nitrogen that comes from septic systems and cesspools. And so what does that look like? So in the traditional cesspool system, you could get us, you know, upwards and over 40 milligrams per liter of nitrogen from a household system. The New York State limit for chronic water quality standard, that's with relation to human health, is 4.8. So that is well above a human health standard. The EPA for wildlife, for fish populations, puts the criteria at 2.3. So it is certainly an environmental matter, but it also is a human health issue. So just a brief overview of the environmental impacts. There's a loss of critical habitat, eelgrass habitats, which we can't see, but are breeding and feeding grounds for fish. I don't know if you can tell, there's a fluke eating nicely in that top left picture. And salt marsh. It damages the roots of the salt marsh plants and causes the salt marsh to recede. Above and beyond their habitat value, which is quite high, they serve as land protection and coastal resiliency in a natural way. So the receding of the salt marshes on our coastlines is becoming increasingly important for those reasons also. And so we look at some of the data from, there is a USGS station that continuously monitors water quality data here in Riverhead. And so this is just a couple of months in 2015. One of the things that increasing nitrogen does in the system is lower the amount of oxygen. Oxygen is important for anything that lives in the water. So just take note of where those two yellow arrows are, and those are points of extreme low. That dotted line on the top, that's that 4.8 human health marker, just to give you an idea. So what does this cause? We have all this nitrogen coming into the water. It is the driver, or one of the main drivers for harmful algal blooms. We have seen in recent times rust tides. This is a picture of Long Island Sound, I believe, which is directly impacting shell fisheries. This is the Alexandrian, which causes the red tide, which is plaguing Florida, but also pops up here on Long Island, and that is the leading cause of the fish kill. And this is a picture from the fish kill in this area from 2015. Now, if we remember back to that graph that I had with those two yellow arrows, this is the time that this happened, when the oxygen is lowest and the nitrogen is highest.
But isn't it where the oxygen is low because the bluefish are chasing all of the bunker into areas and they're absorbing all the oxygen and that's why they're dying?
That's
No.
responsible for some fish kills. The most recent one in Shinnecock Bay, I believe, was associated with that. The one
Justin, I'm just gonna have you come up here because you're not mic'd, and there's some microphones up here, so maybe if you just, we'll have you sit up here during this if you wanna, go ahead.
But I just wanted to say that the Shinnecock Bay one of last year or the year before was due to basically the bunker being chased in by the blues. But they've done plenty of research, and it's caused by the nitrogen levels causing the algal blooms. The algal bloom sucks up the oxygen and killed off the fish.
Right, so the Ludwigia and the species that are in the bays and in the region, in the creeks, that is also causing nitrogen depletion. Oxygen depletion.
It can cause oxygen depletion when you have a whole school that gets trapped, essentially.
Yes.
But those are, most of what we're talking about, what we've seen, turtle kills, shellfish, dying off has all been due to nitrogen.
Right, and we've had an eelgrass problem for, I think, over 25, 30 years, right? As far as being able to grow and maintain eelgrass farms.
Probably.
Yeah, the eelgrass habitat areas have been decreasing. But the big decrease started in the 80s with the brown tide. And then there's for eelgrass, there are other causes as well, you know. And again, all these things don't exist in a vacuum. Algal blooms are also exploding because the water's getting too warm, you know. So that's certainly a contributing factor, is the heating of the currents that run through. But as far as dissolved oxygen levels and nutrients going into the water, we see this especially at these continuous monitoring stations. There's one in Orient, there's one in Riverhead, and I'm hopefully gonna have one put in on the South Fork as well in the Peconics to really gauge how that's, you know, moving around in the system. But that's your driver also, that nitrogen.
Yeah, and fertilizer, because we have a lot of farms here in Riverhead, and the fertilizer and the nitrogen from the fertilizer has been a problem, and I know that the state has been looking at time release fertilizers, so that it's not as much of an impact on the estuary, but for some reason, they just can't get it done.
Right, the state, I think that went to, or tried to go to a vote recently, and it was exploded a little bit. Agriculture, to their credit, has taken steps.
Big steps.
Big steps, and so they are trying. Dealing with that type of, nitrogen release from agriculture is just approached differently, you know, than something like this. The next big thing that needs to be tackled, from my perspective, that we're trying to put a plan together, is lawn fertilizers.
Yeah,
So again,
that's
it's
one
the
of the biggest
households not knowing or hiring somebody to come in and apply the lawn fertilizers with not a lot of knowledge, about how to do that, how much to do it.
Right.
And that's a huge issue too.
And they put too much on, and years
Absolutely.
ago, I had proposed legislation to limit the amount of fertilizer-dependent vegetation that was permitted on new construction, and it failed. So maybe that's something that we could talk about too, is if you limit the fertilizer-dependent vegetation on a new parcel to 15%, you're not letting somebody put a lawn on 2 acres of land.
Yeah, no, that's a fantastic idea.
The challenge is to have the fertilizer made. I know that this has been a challenge to get the fertilizer that meets the requirements to do that, and that's been something there's been legislation put forward in that has not moved forward quickly, so, you know, I think the town's supporting that, and we do have, you know, I think as Joyce was saying, it's a multi-prong approach, so I agree.
Right, yeah, I mean, this is obviously just one facet of it. There are certainly other things that we're looking at and trying to, sort of kickstart again. And of course, it affects fishing, tourism, recreation, and coastal resiliency. Oh, and now.
There you go.
There we go. So but everybody wants to know, how does this affect me? This is a really good diagram of the water cycle on Long Island. I apologize, you can't see it very well. On the left, it's looking east. On the left is the Long Island Sound. On the right is the Atlantic Ocean. And in the middle, eastward would be the Peconics. And just what it's showing you are the aquifers, the glacial aquifer, the Mahinia aquifer, and the deeper aquifer there. And it just really shows that water, both from land and runoff, and nitrogen deposition from the air, is going straight back into the system. And again, Long Island uses a sole source aquifer. So this is something that you should really, you know, put a pin in to think about a little bit more seriously. I think everybody makes the assumption, you know, the algal blooms we can see and smell. Fish kills are upsetting. We see them, we experience them. You know, drinking water quality needs to be part of the conversation as well. I mean, that's not my area of expertise, but they really should be sort of combined when talking about something like this. And just to give you an idea to that, this is a figure from 2005 in the aquifers, the increase in nitrogen in the glacial aquifer and the Magpie aquifer. So it's pretty significant. And you can see that changes in the groundwater level. And this comes from the Suffolk County Water Resource Management Plan from 2010. So this is old data. I would operate under the assumption that, you know, it's gone up from here.
And you look at all the other towns around us that are high density, that are on conventional sanitary systems, I mean, that is a big contributor. I mean, our farmers are nothing compared to the high density build out in other towns surrounding us.
Oh, absolutely. Not only that, but, you know, wastewater treatment plants. I would imagine too, I haven't looked at the numbers, we're gonna be producing reports this year with the differences, but since the upgrade of the treatment plant here, I'm sure that has altered those nitrogen levels that we see in Flanders in that slide I showed you before.
I was gonna say.
But I haven't looked at them concretely yet to be able to say anything conclusive. And so this is just a nice, well, it was a diagram that shows you the similar thing of the nitrogen going into the system, and the increase in septic systems. So I will turn it over to Justin for the inner workings of the innovative on-site wastewater treatment. Great.
Thank you very much, Joyce.
All right, so whoever here doesn't know me, I'm Justin Jobin, Environmental Project Coordinator with the Health Department in Suffolk County. I originated in Rhode Island, so I've been out here maybe close to 3 years now. I did similar things in Rhode Island, managing innovative alternative wastewater systems. And when the county executive kicked off his Reclaim Our Water initiative in 2014, the first step was to do a multi-state septic tour where they went to New Jersey, Maryland, Rhode Island, and Massachusetts. At that point, they had reached out, I did some consulting, and finally they brought me on board in 2016. So I've been here and been part of some of the changes that we've had. All right, so mainly in regards to nitrogen pollution, and in regards to wastewater, we have a 5-pronged approach. Looking at new technologies that can reduce nitrogen as opposed to what we have now, which are basically just concrete 12-foot deep holes in the ground that the waste goes directly into. So we're trying to get away from that. And then as we're getting away from those the antiquated technologies towards more advanced technologies, we want to make sure the industry is prepared. That's a lesson I took from Rhode Island, make sure that we have a training program in place so that the installers know how to install the systems, design the systems, maintain the systems. So we did that. That was the first change to the legislative level in 2015. Then in 2016, we went back to the legislature to change the sanitary code to allow for these new systems without a border review variance as a right. And then we're still talking about new changes and new policy decisions going forward. We have a working group that's looking at that. Recently, we've changed with cesspool phase out July 1st, 2019. You'll no longer be able to replace a cesspool with a cesspool. You'll at least need a minimum code compliant system, which is a septic tank going to a leaching pool. So that was one of the changes.
Which is what we did a couple years ago. When you had the old block systems, we required and worked with the health department where they would review these applications even though they weren't increasing the number of bedrooms.
Absolutely. So now that's countywide. So. And then ultimately, in order to put the new technologies in place, the county executive has been very clear that we need 2 things. We need to identify the priority areas and we need a funding mechanism. So we have our sub-watershed to wastewater management plan underway, which is going to provide a blueprint, show nitrogen load reduction goals, exactly what we were talking about. Where is the nitrogen load from fertilizer? Is it from wastewater? And look at what the septic system reduction goals are or other nitrogen load reduction goals are. So that's going to be completed sometime in 2019. And then funding mechanism, we have a grant and loan program that's a pilot program at this point in time with the hopes of a long-term financing revenue stream that would help to finance further upgrades. And I know I don't have a lot of time, so I'm going to move through these fairly quickly. We did 2 demonstration programs. We've had a total of 14 different technologies. Suffolk County has the largest population of septic systems in the U.S. We're very densely populated in Suffolk County. So most of the U.S. is 25% are on septics. In Suffolk County, 75% or 74% are on septic systems. So it's a huge number. The good news is that when we went out to the industry and we said, what type of systems do you have? Are you willing to donate systems to be installed in Suffolk County so we can see if they really work in our environmental conditions and weather conditions? We had international interest. So we have companies from Germany, Japan, 2 from Canada, and a whole bunch in the U.S. So we have a lot of systems that are going in the ground or that have gone in the ground that we're looking at. The health department is evaluating. We've provisionally approved 6 technologies for use in Suffolk County. But how do these systems work? All of the systems that are approved are biological systems, so meaning that they work, basically they mimic the nitrogen cycle. So if you're familiar with the nitrogen cycle at all, which is the second most important chemical process or biological process on Earth, second only to photosynthesis, is that you're converting in the septic tank your organic nitrogen to ammonium, and then once you add air to that, you're converting it to nitrite and nitrate, and that's typically what you find in your fertilizers. And then what happens is once you add air, you need to take oxygen away, because you see the NO3, if you take that oxygen molecule off of there, you'll essentially have nitrogen gas, which is how these systems function. So instead of having the nitrogen cycle take place in the Peconic estuary, causing damage and the way, we're mimicking the nitrogen cycle in prepackaged septic treatment units.
Amazing.
And we do that by, basically, you have your septic tank where there is no oxygen. That is where the ammonification takes place, organic nitrogen to ammonium. Then you add basically an aerobic compartment where the oxygen is added. That's your secondary treatment. That's where nitrification occurs. And then you have to return that nitrogen back to an area where there's no oxygen in order to get that oxygen molecule stripped off, because think the bugs in the septic tank are hungry for oxygen because there's no oxygen there. So when they get that nitrate molecule, they see that oxygen and they rip that oxygen off as food. So that's basically how these systems work. I've been asked in a couple of presentations not to talk about how these systems work because the science kind of tends to put people to sleep, but I think it's important. So I snuck these few slides in here. And then ultimately it goes
Did it
out.
painlessly.
Yes, that was good.
Goes out to the leaching structure.
I know that.
So our provisionally approved systems, we have HydroAction, FujiClean, Norweco, 2 Norweco products. One's a larger Norweco system. And then we have a biomicrobic Septitech Star, which was just approved. Hope actually they'll get their approval letter today. And the Arenco Advantex RT. So some of these systems are 1-tank systems, some are 2-tank systems, but they all add air. HydroAction has an aerator that blows air into the system. FujiClean has an aerator, it has no submerged parts, but it has submerged media, so the bacteria can grow on different types of plastic media. Norweco Singulair has an aerator that goes on and off every 30 to 60 minutes. Hydrokinetic has an air blower. Septitech and Arenco are what we call media filters, where you're spraying the wastewater over some type of media. Septitech uses polystyrene beads, so if you think of your coffee cup that's made out of polystyrene, or a beanbag chair, if you were to cut that open, that's exactly basically what they're using for treatment media in the Septitech system. The Arenco system has sheets of Polartec fleece, basically. So it sprays that, and the good thing about both of these situations, both of these systems, is that you can pull out the media, hose it off, clean it, put it back in. So it can be reused. Basically there's different ways to add the oxygen. You can use a direct air blower to infuse oxygen, or you can spray it over some type of media to add the oxygen. So all these systems perform to our stringent standard of 19 milligrams per liter during our septic demo period. However, Newsday did an article back in April, I believe, News 12 covered it as well, showed that in the provisional sampling period, some of the systems were not performing to the 19. And although that was accurate, it was a little skewed. So it was skewed because it was a very limited data set that they were looking at. They were looking at the provisional data only, and Arenco, for example, only had one system in the ground. You can't draw a lot of scientific conclusions off of one system that we're looking at. But Norweco Singulair was having some problems. It was struggling. The hydrokinetic was skewed with winter data. The systems do perform better in the warmer weather. The bacteria grows better in the warmer weather. But the Norweco Singulair had some significant problems, which the company has addressed. A lot of it was addressed through operation and maintenance, and a few changes at the manufacturing level. And now the systems are performing extremely well. So just wanted.
Did the systems have to be removed to?
No, they didn't have to be removed. They had to be pumped out. One was basically the pipe that moves the water from one part of the tank to another part of the tank was designed in such a way that it was prone to being clogged, so nothing was getting through properly, so they weren't getting the proper oxygen back through the system. So they had to redesign that by putting a T on and doing some work. There was also a filter that was tearing, so they changed the filter type and just simple things like that. It is relatively new, so we're learning as we go. One thing to point out is that FujiClean and Hydro Action have performed incredibly well throughout the period and both sets of testing. Norweco Singular, you see it was high, now the numbers are starting to come down. Orenco still has a limited data set, and Norweco Hydrokinetics starting to come back down. It's in the mid-20s, it'll hopefully get back down under 19.
Question on this slide, are those based on the average of all the samplings that are taken, or that's the best data that you found?
This is the provisional data which looks at the average of bi-monthly sampling for 2 years. We're only about a year in. We want to see 20 systems, not all. You can see the number of systems in the right. Hydro Action has 13 systems they're sampling. Norweco only has 7 right now. So this is all of the data that we have during the provisional sampling.
Because I went on the Clean Water website and I looked at the analysis of all the samplings that were done and nitrogen reduction, and the numbers were very inconsistent. One day the nitrogen levels were so high, the next day they were low, and then the next day they were right on target with your goals. So I have concerns about that.
Right. Well, that's month to month, and one thing you have to look at is these are individual homes. Every individual home is different, and some days you're going to have spikes in your wastewater, and other days it's going to be different. So sewage treatment plant equalizes flow. It gets flow from every home and it puts it into giant tanks and equalizes it. There's no flow equalization here, so what you're looking at is if a home has a party on a weekend and a lot of people over, you're going to have a high nitrogen load that needs to be treated over time. Whereas if you're just 2 people in a house operating it normally, then you're going to have fairly consistent loading. So each house is different. This is why we're not looking at these like sewage treatment plants, but as individual systems. So I'm just going to go, I know I'm running out of time, so I'm going to go very quickly through a few of these. We have several more systems that we're looking at: constructed wetlands, nitrogen reducing biofilters, our field built systems. The rest are modular systems that we're looking at. As you can see from our preliminary data, Septitech's actually been approved, so there's about 3 systems that are ready for approval, or could be eligible for approval, I should say, in this year. The rest of them are struggling. They're not meeting our standards, so chances are they're, at this point in time, they're not going to receive approval. We also have some commercial projects in the ground, one at Maship Beach. We have one in Lake Ronkonkoma County Park. We're moving forward with Vanderbilt, and the Nature Conservancy is installing a wetland system at Upland Farms. So our Suffolk County Septic Improvement Program was signed into law May 31st, 2017. Just going to mention that it's a grant loan program, a grant of up to $11,000, a low interest loan through Community Development Corporation of Long Island for $10,000 over 15 years at 3%. So that's a good way to incentivize homeowners. Instead of putting in a new cesspool or a conventional system, they can put in an advanced treatment system that reduces nitrogen for little out-of-pocket expense. So that's our plan. We went out.
Could you just address a little bit the conventional system versus one of these systems for a homeowner put in?
Yep.
And just some of the additional costs that occur with the system?
Sure. Absolutely. So there are additional costs, and we're very upfront about that. All of these systems use some sort of electricity, whether it's blowers, I mentioned smaller aerators, that range between $27 and $200 a year to operate. So that's one cost. Operation and maintenance, like any household utility now, they do need to be maintained on an annual basis. So that runs anywhere from $250 to $400 a year, depending on the technology. The first 3 years are included in the purchase of the system while it's under a manufacturer warranty. After that, it becomes the homeowner's responsibility. So really, if you're looking at anywhere from $300 to in some cases up to $700 a year in costs between electricity and operation and maintenance.
And that would depend on the size of the home generally?
Size of the home, type of system that they choose. Some of the newer systems use very little energy, and some of the systems use more extensive energy. The thing is if you're it all has to do with oxygen. So a lot of the systems, the smaller the footprint, the more energy you have to use. The larger the footprint, the less energy, because you can kind of spread things out a little bit. That's not always the case. For example, Fuji Clean is a very small system and it uses very little electricity.
But just, and also the overall expense of the initial outlay, the
Yeah.
differences between a conventional and.
So a conventional system, probably $5,000 to $10,000 on average. That's your septic tank and your leaching pool. One of these systems, we went out to, for solicitation of quotes to the industry to see what the costs are. Basically, it's $17,000 to $20,000 is the range. Our average cost through our septic improvement program, after close to 40 installations so far, is about 21 and change is the average cost. So if they take advantage of this program, again, little out-of-pocket expense, but there's still some out-of-pocket expense plus the maintenance plus the electricity. And that doesn't include landscaping afterwards, so there's some people who want to bring in sod afterwards and bring in new irrigation and things like that.
So if on average, is, let's say it costs a homeowner with the conventional system, say $8,000.
Yep.
With the grants and without the loan program, but just the grant program, what would are we looking at $10,000, $12,000 to put a new system in, or?
Right, an additional 10 to 12,000, yes,
But that's if you're eligible for the grant.
absolutely.
And also, it has, I was interested in that you have a commercial application, because the last I heard is that these systems have not been installed on commercial properties. So do you have the data for those commercial systems?
Yeah, the system at Mashut Beach has been working extremely well for 3 seasons now. Getting, I think, averaging, it averaged for the first 2 seasons, 17 milligrams per liter. That was getting, designed at 3,000 gallons a day, getting peak flows of 10,000 gallons a day. So that was a good system. There's a bunch of systems. We changed our standards in January to allow for commercial systems, to allow commercial innovative systems. So that's been going forward. So there's a lot coming in the pipeline that haven't been installed yet. We do have Lake Ronkonkoma that's just been up and running recently. Vanderbilt hasn't gone in the ground yet. There's not a lot of commercial systems. Peconic Baykeeper's putting a system in, and Hampton Bay is. So there are systems going in. There are commercial systems. Where I'm from in New England, there are commercial systems all over the place. They need more maintenance. You're not maintaining them every 6 months or every year. You're doing monthly to quarterly maintenance on them. But they do function, and they have worked to 19 milligrams per liter.
So as of January 18, you allow these types of systems on the commercial projects, but you're not requiring them?
No, we don't, the only time that we would require is if there is an existing application that is over density and grandfathered in, and they're looking to change the use. And in that case, we would require them to put in a better performing system. Other than that, the county has no requirements. We're starting slow. It's voluntary at this point. There's no residential mandate. There's no commercial mandate. So we're starting
Researching.
slow. We're slowly ramping up. We're getting our septic improvement program going. The state has awarded us $10.25 million to give out in grants in the first year to homeowners to upgrade their systems to nitrogen-reducing systems. So we'll have up to 1,000 grants to give out to homeowners. So there's a lot of stuff in the works, but there's no requirements at this point in time.
Are there any restrictions as cleaning materials? Because I heard that bleach was detrimental to the system. If you're a person that cleans with a lot of bleach, could you
Right.
kill the bacteria?
So bleach, what we've seen is somebody who had a fish tank and they were bleaching their coral, and they used like 80 ounces of bleach, flushed it down. It killed the bacteria in the system for a month, and then you saw slowly the next month it recovered a little bit. By the second month, it was back to normal. So normal bleach use is fine. Use any cleaners in moderation. You're good. Be really careful with your organic cleaners, your peppermint oils, your spearmint oils, your eucalyptus oils. Those straight oils, a lot of people don't dilute them, and they get diluted in the septic tank, and they kill a lot of bacteria. Besides that, your normal cleaning and normal cleaner usage, everything in moderation is fine.
Okay.
All right?
Thank you for your time, Jason. I gotta run to something else. Thank you.
So I think I
See
covered.
you next Friday, right? Yes.
think I covered all of this. My last slide is very simple, just an overview of the septic improvement program. We've had it says 355 registrants, that's 1,355 registrants. And then 393 completed applications, 270 grant certificates we issued. We have 87 total permit applications in the Office of Wastewater Management. 51 have been approved and 35 have been installed. So that pretty much is all I have to offer you today. Any questions? My email and phone number are here.
So my question is, the difference in the nitrogen that is created with the traditional system versus one of these improved systems, what is the difference?
Great question. So what we're seeing is typical septic tank effluent is between 60 and 80 milligrams per liter. Our standard is 19. So what you're looking at is close to a 70% reduction in total nitrogen. Sewage treatment plants will get you a 90% reduction, but as you know, they're extremely expensive, and it's just not applicable everywhere. So this is a good, I hate to say cost-effective way, because they are more expensive, but when you really look at the cost per pound of nitrogen removed, it is a cost-effective way to remove nitrogen. So you're getting about a 70% removal.
And just from the health department, have they done any kind of analysis, because obviously this is a big expense? And you know, as Joyce was saying, as things break, that's when people fix them to do that. Has there been any critical areas as far as, you know, 100 feet from the sound or from the bay? Is there sort of this number that's more effective if a town were to do something, so that if you don't wanna implement it all across the board, but you wanna still continue to address in a meaningful way?
That's exactly what the sub-watersheds plan's looking at. It's looking at travel time, priority areas, to give the towns and to give the county a blueprint for requirements and policy decisions moving forward. Right now, our septic incentive program incentivizes the priority areas, the 0 to 25 year contributing area to surface waters. So that's what we're using right now, but that's subject to change when the sub-watersheds plan comes out.
And when did you say you think that's gonna be complete?
Sometime in 2019.
In 2019. Any questions from anybody?
No, I mean, I know it's expensive, but you have to look at the long haul, you
That's
know?
right.
Absolutely.
What's more expensive, bringing in bottled water or protecting the water you got?
And keep in mind, I mean, right now, when I came out here, I was shocked that you're dumping water into these huge deep pits in the ground, and that's it. You flush your toilet, right? It's essentially an injection well. Most of the country has gone to at least horizontal leaching. Suffolk County doesn't do that. We've amended our regulations when we now allow for that. So Suffolk County was decades behind, and they're finally getting caught up. And the good thing about starting from behind is that you can learn from others' mistakes and kind of pick and choose, and I think we've done a decent job of that in the health department.
And get the newer technology, right?
Absolutely. All right,
Thank you very much, appreciate that.
Thank you.
All right. Okay,
Anything you need to know, Brad?
so now, thank you, Brad. A first and second to go into executive session for matters leading to the potential discipline of an employee.
Potential, yes.
So is that a first, second?
Second.
All right, all in favor? All right, so carried.
They did a first and seconded.